Be doing our live stream presentation on our NFPA 13D home fire sprinkler system education. My name is Ryan Sylvia. I'm a lieutenant with the Lakeville Fire Department. We are here to give this educational presentation as part of our home fire sprinkler week from the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition. We do have representatives from them here showing their support, which is awesome. But basically, we've been designated here on the Lakeville Fire Department as a Built for Life Fire Department, which means that we've basically been recognized for our efforts in fire prevention and getting the message out on the safety and efficiency of the home fire sprinklers. So this is going to be part of our educational rollout that we've been going through all week here, okay? So in order to kind of set this up, I usually like to start with talking about a little bit of history. Okay, because I think that figuring out where we came from is a really good way of kind of setting the stage for where we are now and where we're going to be going in the future. So the concept of the automatic fire sprinkler is actually a very old concept. It's an old technology. The first one was actually invented by Philip Pratt in 1872. And then that setup was actually improved and perfected by two gentlemen named Henry Parmalee and Frederick Grinnell in the 1890s. Okay, you can see on the screen here just some different variations of sprinkler heads that went through the years as they started improving these things. Okay, one thing to understand about automatic fire sprinklers is that these were designed to protect commercial buildings originally, and they were designed really as a property conservation tool rather than a life safety tool. So these were really pushed in the early days by insurance companies because they were having these huge fires in these factories and warehouses, and they were losing a lot of property, right? The buildings were burned to the ground, they were losing all the product, they were losing the buildings, and we needed to try to figure out a way of preventing those massive property losses, right? And it just so happened that once we started pushing these sprinkler systems into those buildings, we realized, hey, if we stop the fire when it's small and we control it, then all of a sudden now we have a life safety benefit there too, because people are less likely to get injured or killed in a fire if it's controlled early, right? So in 1947 we had the Truman Report. Okay, the President Truman commissioned the President's Conference on Fire Prevention to address the losses in life and property resulting from fires. This is one of his big issues that he felt very passionate about during his presidency. So he started this conference, and one of the things in this report that they called for was the expansion of this automatic sprinkler system technology to include dormitories, hospitals, nursing homes, special needs homes, not necessarily residential at this point, but that was kind of where the ball started rolling to where we started thinking, okay, let's get these out of just the commercial buildings and let's start putting these where people are actually living and staying, right? So that was 1947. Then in 1973, we had the issuance of America Burning. Okay, the National Commission on Fire Prevention and Control released this report. It was a huge deal throughout the nation and for the fire service. We still reference this report today and a lot of the findings and recommendations there. This was released when the country was in the midst of an unprecedented fire crisis. The late 60s and 70s were a very bad time for our country for fires. We were leading the world, the industrialized world anyway, in incidents of fire, property damage, lives lost. It was a major issue. So this report was very extensive. It's basically the whole book. All kinds of different recommendations came out. But on fire sprinklers specifically, one of the things that the report said was that we need more research and development towards automatic extinguishing systems, fire sprinklers, that will be cheap, aesthetically acceptable, and adaptable to existing homes as well as new construction. So for the first time, we had a report saying we need to get these fire sprinklers into people's homes. That occurred in 1973. In 1975, the National Fire Protection Association released NFPA 13D. NFPA 13D, introduced in 1975, it's been continually updated ever since. It's now in its 50th edition. It's in the 2022 edition, which is the 15th revision of the standard. It is a residential sprinkler design standard that's focused on 1- and 2-family dwellings and manufactured homes. So these are the homes that you all are living in today. 1- and 2-family homes and manufactured homes. This was the first consensus document for that type of a sprinkler system, and it remains the industry standard today. The intent of NFPA 13D is to provide an affordable sprinkler system while maintaining a degree of life safety, or a high level of life safety. That's the purpose of the system, okay? So what is it? What is an NFPA 13D sprinkler system? If you're familiar at all with fire sprinkler systems, maybe you work in a building that has a sprinkler system, or office, or warehouse, something like that, understand that this is a completely different animal. Home fire sprinklers are a completely different setup, and they use a lot of the same technology, but it's for a different purpose, okay? The NFPA 13D system is designed to suppress fires before they reach the flashover stage, and buying time for occupants to escape safely. That's the purpose. The home fire sprinklers are a life safety system. They're not a property conservation system. So they're not designed primarily to extinguish the fire. They do in a lot of cases, and we have many case studies and many examples where they do actually extinguish the fire when it's just starting. But that's not the primary drive of the system. The primary drive of the system is to prevent that fire from going out of control, right, and reaching that flashover stage and preventing you from escape. It's there to buy time for you guys to get out of your homes in the event of a fire. That's the purpose of it. According to the NFPA 13D standard, sprinklers are only required to be installed in living spaces. So they're going to be installed in your living rooms, your bedrooms, family areas, places where people commonly stay and gather. It's not throughout the entire house. Okay, it's just in the living spaces. And this system can work with domestic plumbing and water supplies. Okay, if you have town water, that's going to be a sufficient system for you. Okay, if you are like the majority of people in Lakeville and you're working off of wells, you can use a well for a 13D system. Okay, the only thing that you need to have according to the standard is your system, your water supply system has to be able to supply 2 sprinkler heads running for a period of 10 minutes. Just enough time to get you out of the house, right? So you don't need extensive water supplies or really expensive options for this type of system. Okay, you work off of your domestic plumbing. Okay. So if these things are so great, why don't we see them more often, right? We should be seeing these in homes all over the place if they're so great, but we really don't. It may surprise a lot of you to know that all of the model building codes that are used in the United States today require fire sprinklers to be installed in new homes. But most areas of the country, with few exceptions, do not adapt that part of the building code. Okay, they grant exemption, they take that part of the building code out. Okay, there are opponents of home fire sprinklers. Okay, and from the opponent's perspective, what they say is that the cost benefit of these systems doesn't make sense. Okay, they say that the cost is too high for the potential benefit that you get, and the additional cost may discourage people from buying new homes. That's kind of their perspective from the other side. Okay, and really, there really wasn't a whole lot of advocacy on a national level for home fire sprinklers. And you know what? Shame on the fire service for that, right? We weren't really active in promoting these things for a long time, but that's changed in recent years. In the last few years, we've really kind of made a real push to try to advocate for these systems and try to get these into houses. So what changed? Why are we all of a sudden becoming bigger advocates for these systems now? This slide here is going to tell you why, right? This is data of home fire incidents and deaths from 1980 to 2021. Since 1980, our home fires in this country are down 66%. Okay, and that's due to a number of reasons, but we've gotten a lot better at fire prevention in our country, right? I think people are a lot more educated about the dangers of fire now. Fire departments certainly do a much better job with public education. We're out in the schools constantly teaching people from a young age the dangers of fire. People are just more conscious, and I think also you have things like stronger building codes now. Electrical systems are safer now than they were back in the days. So our incidence of fire, we're doing a good job. We're getting that way down, okay? But look at that top graph, though. Home fire deaths per 1,000 fires is up 13%. Okay? So what that means for you is that you are 66% less likely to have a fire in your home today than you were in 1980, but you're 13% more likely to die in a house fire today than you were in 1980. How does that make sense? Right? You would think that if we're doing such a good job on fire prevention, we're getting all these houses down, those deaths should be way down, the death rate should be way down, right? But it's not. And why? Because our home environment has changed, okay? The houses that we're living in today are not your grandparents' houses. All of our furnishings, think about all of the furnishings that you have in your house, your couches, your mattresses, your curtains. These are manufactured with synthetic materials. We're not making this stuff out of cotton and real wood and wool anymore. We're building this stuff out of particle board, out of polyester. We're using polyurethane foam padding, right? These are all petroleum-based substances. Okay, these are made from oil, petroleum. What that means is that when these burn, when you look at all the stuff in your home, when these things burn, they burn very readily. They burn very, very hot, release tremendous amounts of heat, and they produce extremely toxic smoke. Okay? Smoke inhalation is what kills the majority of people that die in fires, right? And we're pulling people out of fires now, not just with carbon monoxide poisoning, that most people probably know about. We're pulling people out of houses now with cyanide poisoning, with phosgene poisoning. All of this stuff is being produced as a result of the burning of these synthetic materials. And the heat from these things is tremendous when you light these things on fire. Okay? Also, when you build a new home, modern homes nowadays are generally larger. They generally have more open floor plans than before. And they're built with lightweight construction techniques in many cases. Okay? You know, if anybody ever watches, HGTV or whatever, you watch the Property Brothers and they rebuild these new homes, what's like the first thing that people always want with these new homes, right? I want to take all the walls up. I want to make this big open because I want more space to make the house, feel bigger than what it is. But you're taking away compartmentation there. You're taking away the ability to close off that fire and keep it contained to one room, right? And so now you have more fuel available to fire, you have more oxygen available to fire, and because we're building these houses now with more lightweight techniques, we're replacing mats, we're replacing these big pieces of wood that they use to build your house, and they're replacing that with geometry now. They're building houses out of engineered trusses now and I-beams that are much more efficient from a construction perspective, right? And you're never going to notice the difference if your house doesn't catch fire. But when you have a fire, because you don't have that great mass of those big dimensional lumber anymore, you're actually you're removing that home's ability to fight the effects of fire. Okay, so these buildings are collapsing a lot sooner now, and the fires in general are just way worse now than what they were before. Okay, you can have the best fire department in the world with the best response times. Okay, and I'm going to tell you here at Lakeville Fire Department, we're going to do everything we possibly can to save your life and to save your home. Okay, but we need a chance. Okay, we need a chance. And average response times throughout the country to a house fire is running right about 8 minutes. And I'm going to tell you we're probably about that here in Lakeville, because think about the area we have to cover. We run out of one fire station with 3 firefighters on duty. Okay. If you live out in an outlying area, if you live down in the Malvern Streets, Pierce Avenues, Harding Streets, that's a long way for us to go, okay? And what's happening to that fire while we're responding there is growing, okay? Right? You may have heard that fire is doubling in size every minute. Throw that right out the window nowadays, right? You're talking about 10, 20, 30 seconds that fire is doubling in size now. And in a lot of cases, the fire departments are not even getting a chance to get there and do the things that we need to do. So we need to have an equalizer, and that equalizer is going to be our home fire sprinklers. Okay, so this is a video that is from the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition, and it actually shows a mock-up of 2 rooms that they put together that has all the same furnishings and everything that a regular house would. One room has a fire sprinkler, one room does not, and you guys are going to see the difference. And I want you guys to decide, do you want to be in a house that has a sprinkler or the one with no sprinkler? You make the call.
A house fire can become deadly in 2 minutes. The fire burns hot and fast. It creates toxic smoke that spreads throughout the house. You are about to experience 2 fires in 2 rooms that were set up with identical furnishings. The rooms are the same size, same windows and doors. The fires in both rooms were ignited with incombustible materials commonly found in typical living rooms. One room is protected with a home fire sprinkler. The other is not. This is the room that does not have a fire sprinkler. After the fire starts, it quickly moves up the curtain and spreads to the furniture. The smoke alarm activates at 24 seconds.
So you can see this fire is already hitting the ceiling right now, and it's actually propagating across the ceiling. We're starting to see that thermal layer starting to have an effect here. This is not even 40 seconds in.
Look above you and behind you. The smoke is thick and
You see
dark.
the smoke starting
There is
to hang
nothing
down
to
now?
stop the fire, so it builds strength, generating heat and producing poisonous smoke until flashover, the point at which everything in the room ignites. Watch for that when the timer reads 2 minutes. No one can survive flashover.
So this room right about now is pretty much untenable for anybody to be in without protective gear, okay? And all that black toxic smoke is also going throughout the house now too. So even if this is your living room, right, if you're in a bedroom, you're sleeping or something, you're getting overcome by the smoke right now. This fire just flashed over, this room is completely gone. And this is how consuming the whole house is. Anybody that's in this room is gone. Right now. And we haven't even gotten to the door yet with the fire department. Hopefully somebody's noticed this and has called us, but you know, from the time it takes to recognize, call 911, get the message
Look
to
around.
us to get out the
Everything
door.
is destroyed by the extreme heat and smoke.
And this is what's up behind.
Remember the flashover? There would be only seconds for the family to escape a fire before flashover. The destruction in this room makes it clear. The home is uninhabitable and a complete loss. This room is protected with one fire sprinkler in the ceiling. As the curtain catches fire, note how fast the flames spread. Watch the timer.
It's going to be hard for you guys to see, but the sprinkler head is right there.
At 26 seconds, smoke activates the smoke alarm. Find the sprinkler in the ceiling. At 37 seconds, high heat from the fire activates the sprinkler, controlling the fire and preventing it from becoming deadly. Only the heat from fire activates the sprinkler, not smoke. In a typical house fire, only one sprinkler will activate. Take a close look at the room after the sprinkler activated. There is very little damage. The room is wet, but intact. Look around the room. If a family were sleeping, the sprinkler would have given them time to safely escape. The fire is confined to the room of origin, and the family would likely be able to stay in the home or move back into the home in a few days.
So we have very little damage to this room right now, right? They got some burned curtains, they got some burned, drywall there over by the window. That's pretty much it, right? So big property conservation tool, right? But the most important thing here is nobody is dying in this fire, okay? And this home is still there for that family. So which one would you prefer? To me, it makes a lot of sense. So let's do a little bit of myth busting here now, okay? Because there's a lot of information and maybe a little bit of misinformation about home fire sprinklers that are out there right now, okay? Probably the biggest myth that I hear about sprinkler systems in general, but especially sprinklers in people's homes, is that people are concerned that when one sprinkler head goes, that means that the whole system activates, and you have 10 or 12 sprinkler heads going off in your house, okay? And why wouldn't you think that? Because when you watch television, you watch the movies, isn't that what happens every time a sprinkler goes off? Somebody sets a sprinkler off and then the whole building is being flooded, right? That's a Hollywood fantasy, okay? That's for drama, for entertainment. That's not how a real sprinkler system works, okay? The sprinkler system is activated by heat. Now I'll actually pull the head out here, right? So this system is very, very simple, okay? It's activated by heat. Usually it's rated for somewhere between 135 and 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And what it is that there's a little plug here, and there's a little glass bowl that has a liquid in it. And when this liquid heats up, it reacts with the heat at a certain temperature, and when that breaks, it drops the little plug down, and that allows the water to come from the pipe and hits this little bottom piece here that breaks the sprinkler water up into droplets. Okay, and that's what extinguishes the fire. The big droplets are what allows the sprinkler to work so efficiently because it absorbs heat very, very readily. Okay, but that's it. That's how a sprinkler works. It's a very, very simple mechanical device. But when you have that happen, only the sprinkler head closest to the fire is going to activate. You guys saw it in the video, right? The sprinkler closest to the fire heated up, it let go, and it had the water came down and it extinguished the fire, basically, right? 90% of the fires, according to research, will be controlled with just one sprinkler. Okay, so it's not like a dangerous system or anything like that. It's just a very simple, one sprinkler head goes off, and the only time you're ever going to get more than one is if the fire grows beyond what that sprinkler can control. Right, but 90% of the time it doesn't happen. One head will do. Okay. Another thing, people are concerned about sprinklers leaking, causing water damage. Right, we always worry about that kind of with nature of plumbing. Right. According to the data, fire sprinkler systems are very reliable. They're actually more reliable than the typical plumbing you use for your sink or your toilet. Okay, they leak less often and less severely than your regular home plumbing. So Scottsdale, Arizona actually did a study on this. So Scottsdale was like one of the big case studies that people use when they're looking for data home fire sprinklers, because they were the first ones in the country to actually have a fire sprinkler mandate. They did it in 1986. Okay, the majority of their housing stock in Scottsdale actually has home fire sprinklers, which is amazing. But basically what they did is they did a study and they sent surveys out to all these homeowners that have these sprinkler systems. Only 8% of them ever said that they ever had a leak or maintenance problem with their sprinkler system. Okay, I guarantee you that if you did the same survey with your plumbing on your sink, it'd probably be a lot more than 8%. Right? So are we too worried about that? I don't think so. The same study also found that 100% of the installed systems in Scottsdale, Arizona, were still functioning. So these guys actually went door to door and said, "Hey, can we come and we check your sprinkler system to see if it's still functioning?" And some of these systems at that point in the study were 20 plus years old, and every single one of them was still functioning the way it was supposed to. It was actually funny because in the study they talked about that some of the homeowners didn't even know they had sprinkler systems in the house because they had moved into the house afterwards or whatever, and they go and they ask if they can check the sprinkler system. They're like, "I have sprinklers in the house?" They had no idea. So this is like something that is in the background, you don't even notice it, right? But it's always there, it's always working for you if you need it. That's the important thing. Here's another thing. People think, well, they'll say, well, if I have a sprinkler go off in my house, it's going to cause more damage than fire. Not true. Okay? You guys saw in that video the devastating effects that fires have, right? It's much, much better to control that fire early on than it is to allow it to burn out of control. And here's the thing. If you have a sprinkler in your house, depending on the head, it's going to flow between 10 and 26 gallons per minute. Okay? If you allow that fire to burn uncontrolled, not only are you causing all that damage to the fire, but now I'm going to come in with the fire department, okay, and I'm going to use probably my 1 3/4 hose line that I have, which is our standard fire attack hose line. This nozzle here flows 185 gallons of water a minute. Okay, what's going to cause more water damage to your house? The sprinkler head at 10 to 26, or this thing, right? They did some studies. Equity Global actually did some studies on water damage for fire sprinklers. They show that home fire sprinklers generally reduce the water usage needed to control a fire from anywhere between 50 and 91%. It also cuts off greenhouse gas emissions by 97%, because now instead of allowing that smoke to vent into the environment, it's being controlled when the fire is small, right? And they even did a study on the runoff water from fires with home sprinklers versus not. There was actually very few contaminants inside the water runoff from the fire sprinkler because it's controlling the fire before it has a chance to burn more material, right? So when we get there with the fire department, we're putting 185 gallons of water a minute into your house, and this has already all been burned up. All that water runoff contains all those bad pollutants and carcinogens that we don't want people being exposed to, right? So not only are they life safety friendly, not only are they friendly for your property, they're also environmentally friendly too.
Luke Capone is saying good morning.
Good morning, Luke. Here's another myth, right? Sprinkler systems. People are afraid, well, they're more prone to freezing in the winter, okay? That's not really true either, because, again, the home fire sprinkler systems, if you're following the standard, are only being installed in living spaces. So they're being installed only in living spaces. They're not any more prone to freezing than any of your other domestic plumbing. Okay? Obviously, if you lose heat in your house for a long period of time and during the winter time, they can freeze just like any other piece of plumbing in your house, but they're no more prone to freezing than anything else that you have. Okay? Another one I hear sometimes, well, I have smoke detectors in my house, so why do I need fire sprinklers? Okay? Smoke detectors are great. We love smoke detectors in the fire department. They're essential for fire protection because they give you early warning when a fire starts. Okay? But they only provide you detection. They do not provide you with suppression. They are a passive system. They let you know something's going on, but they don't take any steps to combat that fire or to protect your egress. Okay? A sprinkler system does both. It detects the fire by heat, and then when it activates, it puts the water out and it suppresses the fire. Okay? So what we recommend is that you have both. You have working smoke alarms and you have home fire sprinklers. That gives you the best possible protection. Because now you have your alerting, and then you have your suppression to keep your environment tenable and to allow you to escape the environment. Okay. Another one that I hear a lot. Well, I don't want to deal with the expense and the maintenance of these systems. Okay. We kind of just already talked about it, but I'll emphasize it again. Home fire sprinklers require almost no maintenance. Okay. They only work when you need them, right? And when you don't need them, you hardly notice them. Okay. Like I said, there were people in that study in Arizona that didn't even realize they had them in their house. One couple things that they do recommend, they recommend that you do a simple flow test on these things twice a year. You do not need a contractor or a professional to do that. You can do that yourself. Okay, and I'll go over it when we do the prop. But basically, there's a control, a test valve that twice a year you go in there and you open that test valve, and that's going to flow water through a drain. And if you have water coming through that test valve, you're good to go. And then you just close it and it's fine. And they also recommend that occasionally you just do an observation of your plumbing and just make sure that your valves are open. Okay, make sure that the kids, the dog, whatever, didn't go down there and knock the valve closed or whatever. It's recommended occasionally you go and just make sure that everything's functioning. But that's it, right? It's actually if you have a lawn irrigation system, lawn irrigation systems require way more maintenance than this does, right? And that's only protecting the lawn, not the left, right? So the bottom line, what does it cost? Okay, that's going to be a deciding factor for a lot of people. Okay, it's really difficult for me to come up here and tell you exactly what it's going to cost to put a home fire sprinkler in a home in the building, because it's variable depending on the community, depending on the building materials, right? What I can tell you is that the national average is $1.35 per square foot. Okay, that's the average. And that works out, and this is pretty consistent across all the studies that I've read, it works out to about 1% of the total cost of the home. So if you are building a home with fire sprinklers, it's going to cost you probably about 1% more to add that than if you didn't. Right? To me, that 1% is a pretty good investment for your life safety, And to put it into perspective, that lawn irrigation system, which I see all the time in new houses, is going to cost you about $1.43 to $2.35 per square foot. Wall-to-wall carpeting is going to cost you $3 to $7 per square foot. All right. What's the better investment when you're talking about a home that you're living in, right? You want to make sure you're safe. You want to make sure that your family's safe, right? And those costs are decreasing over time. That's a big deal too, and that's probably half of what a home fire sprinkler would have cost in the 90s. Okay, because we're getting better with technology now. There are things out there that with materials that allow to bring the cost of these things down. Also, one thing that's being found is that the areas that require fire sprinklers generally have the lowest cost, and the reason being is that you're having more systems being installed. So these contractors are buying these components in bulk. They have more experience with installing them, right? So that ultimately drives the market cost down that you have. So the more you put in, the less expensive it's going to be. Just keep in mind that we're talking a lot about new home construction here. You can retrofit this into an existing home. Okay, it is going to be more expensive, just like with any renovation. Trying to put this into an existing home is going to be more expensive. So, not discouraging anybody from doing it. I'm just letting you know that those costs are going to be more if you're trying to retrofit versus putting it in a new home. And that's why we're really trying to push this out into new home construction, right? Another thing to keep in mind is that many insurance companies also offer discounts when a fire sprinkler system is installed too. So that extra cost that you have there, that minimal extra cost, you may actually make it up over the lifespan of that house through discounts from your homeowner's insurance company. Okay? So if you're interested and you think this is a good idea and you want to do more to kind of advocate for this, what can you do as a citizen? If you are looking at building a new home, or you're looking at doing significant renovations even, ask your builder about home fire sprinklers, okay? Ask them about your options for installing these inside your home, okay? They are not required in Massachusetts, but they are available, okay? So if you're going to be building a new home, ask for it. It's worth the investment, okay? You can also contact your elected officials in order to support home fire sprinkler laws, okay? In Massachusetts, our building code is basically set to where you can't, as a community, go above and beyond what the building code is. There's ways around it, like you can do things in certain neighborhoods in case-by-case basis, but basically if the town of Lakeville said, I want to mandate fire sprinklers for all new construction in the town of Lakeville, we can't do it, okay? There's been efforts to change that, but it gets shot down in the legislature every time, all right? You as a citizen have the power to be able to contact elected officials and say, I want more. I want to be able to have resident sprinklers in my community. And then share your knowledge with others, right? Get the message out there. This presentation is going to be available on social media. It's going to be recorded. You can share it, right? Let people know, right? If you know anybody that's doing any big renovations to build a new house, bring it up to them, right? The only way that we're going to be able to push more of this out is through knowledge, right? So that's what I have for the presentation for you guys. The next thing that I wanted to show you is we have a prop here that basically is a setup of a residential fire sprinkler system, okay? This was built, the framing was built up by our facilities manager here in town, Lakeville, called me. He donated all this, the labor and materials for it. That was awesome. And then Piping Systems Inc. out of Sonnet did all of the plumbing work. So again, they donated all the materials and labor for that. So big thanks to those guys for doing this for us. It was awesome. So this just kind of goes through some of the components here that we have. This system that's shown right here is a standalone fire sprinkler system. So you have water that's coming in from wherever you get your water from, either your town line or from your well or cistern or whatever you have supplying this. It comes in, and a standalone system is going to split, right, between your domestic water that supplies your sinks and toilets and all that stuff, and then your sprinkler system. You can now get a multi-purpose system that actually has the same piping that runs all your domestic plumbing. You can actually put the sprinkler system into that, okay? That's a big cost savings. So you can talk to your builder about the specific system that would be best in your home. But there's new technology out there that's really driving kind of the cost of these systems down, right? But in this case here, you've got water coming in, all right? It goes through to your fire sprinkler system. They showed this here. This is copper pipe here, standard copper piping. You can use steel or copper, but then you can also use this PVC piping for the sprinkler system, or you can actually use PEX piping, which is very economical. Okay, so all this is available for the NFPA 13D standard. But if you want to save on cost, you can use plastic piping. Okay, that's totally acceptable for the system. Piping goes up and it's going to feed your sprinkler heads, which again are only going to be in your living space unless you choose to do other stuff. But basically, for the standard, it's just in your living spaces. One of the things people get concerned about is with these pendant sprinkler heads, they're concerned about the looks. Okay, like I don't really want to have these sprinkler heads, coming down through my ceiling or whatever. You can get a sealed sprinkler head. Okay, so this has a little plastic little cover here that can be painted whatever color it is to match your ceiling, right? And then it's the same thing. It'll heat up when it's exposed to fire, and this will actually drop down, and then you have this when you need it. But when you don't need it, this will be recessed in and it's covered. Okay, so if you're worried about aesthetics or looks or whatever, you don't even have to worry about it. They've already thought about it for you. Okay. One thing you do have to just be careful of if you do decide to go with this type is don't paint these over. Okay, because I know a lot of people with the DIY stuff and they change colors in the house or whatever, that's fine. But just make sure you don't paint over this, because then if you paint it and then you make it so that it can't drop down, it's not going to work. But these are a great option for homeowners that are concerned about the looks. And then you can also, this obviously is going to overhead in the ceiling. Depending on the configuration of your house, you may have to drop these down a little bit. You may have to have them sidewalls, which is the same thing. You can have a sealed sidewall head too. Right? So there's no real major issues with this not looking right for your guests coming in or whatever. You're not going to notice it, honestly. There are some optional things that they put on this prop that you can get if you want to. This has a water flow switch That's actually hooked up to a fire alarm indicator. So like if you wanted to, you could have an outside strobe light. It's like you can let the neighbors know if you have like an activation of the sprinkler, up to a gong if you want to. It's totally optional. You don't have to have it, but it's there available to you if you want it. You know, there are things that you can go and upgrade, but it's not necessarily a requirement of the system. Okay? You don't have to carry a spare sprinkler heads. If you guys are familiar with like the commercial stuff, you have to carry a certain number of spare heads. You don't need that with a home fire sprinkler system. They put a backflow preventer here. A lot of communities require this because if you have a sprinkler system, the water is stagnant. They don't want that water to backflow into the domestic side. That is not required per the NFPA 13D standard, and what they can do now to eliminate that is they can actually tie the sprinkler system into one of your toilets. So when you flush the toilet, it actually cycles the water through the system, so the water is never stagnant. So that's a big cost savings there, because not only can you get rid of that, but you can also reduce the size of the piping that you need, because you don't have to overcome the pressure of that backflow. So there's all kinds of new technology that's out there that really helps drive the cost of these sprinkler systems down. So we'll get to it. And then we were talking about like some of the maintenance things to do here. This right here is your test valve that I was talking about. This normally would be closed. Twice a year, come in here and just open this test valve up. Okay? Water's going to flow. It's going to go over the drain usually that goes to the other side of the home. Right? You check that out. Make sure water's flowing. If water's flowing, you close it off, and you know your sprinkler system's working. That's all you got to do. And then every once in a while, you know, you get your control valve here, right? Make sure that this is open. If it's open, it's in line with the pipe. So just you know, every once in a while, I would say, just go there and just make sure that that's all set. So that's the presentation that I have for you guys. Any questions on the live feed?
Nope.
No. Okay. Any questions from anybody or comments on the audience?
Well, one concern I've heard people say is, what if it's really hot weather? Will it trigger that sprinkler?
Especially not inside the house, because the house is climate controlled, where it should be. You know what I mean? So yeah, no. It can. We have occasionally had that happen in different systems, like more of in like multi-family buildings, like commercial buildings, that where they're in places that aren't climate controlled. For a home fire system, it's not going to happen. Anything else? You guys good with that? All right. So if you guys do come up with any other questions, please reach out to us. You can message us on the Facebook page. We have an Instagram too that you can message. You can always call us here at the fire station. We're always available to answer any questions. But hopefully you guys got something out of this presentation. Please consider this stuff when you're building new homes, okay? And thank you very much. Stay safe out there and take care.